Hello everyone, welcome to Jolly Molly TV. Today I'm excited. We're going to work on block 4 of the Kimberbell Main Street Celebration bench pillow / wall hanging. Look at all the blocks we've completed so far. Isn't this amazing? Oh, this is going to be such a cute project. So let's just dive in and get started today. Let's go over to the machine and I'll walk you through how to stitch out block number 4. Let's go. Okay, we are at the machine. Let's load the designs. Let's click Embroidery. We're going to go to the flash drive. We're going to go to Main Street. And then we're going to select the quilting background first. And I'm doing a larger block this time for the truck. So instead of a 6x10, I'm going for the 8x10. And I'm going to click Set, because I don't have to do anything to it. So now we're going to add back to the flash drive, Main Street. And now we're looking for the block with the pickup truck. Select that, and the gas pump. Isn't that cute? Again, we don't have to do anything to it. Click Set. And it's brought that in. So we're ready to go. So click Embroidery. Locks it in, and we are ready to start. Let's go back to the machine. So now we're going to place a piece of no-show mesh into our larger hoop, the 9.5 by 14, and load the machine. Okay, hoop is loaded, and I've put a pale ivory / yellow thread in the top so I can see it a little bit clearer on the no-show mesh. Let's stitch out the placement line for the batting. Okay, the next step is to lay down the batting. Make sure that you've got that placement line covered up and stitch it out. Okay, so now we're going to take the hoop out of the machine, take this over to a flat surface, and we're going to trim the batting all the way around the outside edges. Okay, now we're going to stitch the placement line for the background blue fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to lay down the blue background fabric. And if you remember correctly, the little mistake I made at the beginning was I had cut my background fabric, the blue, before I realized that I was going to add the background quilting with the variegated thread. So rather than have my fabric be wasted, I went ahead and used it. It's a tiny bit short, but I mentioned that it's going to work itself out at the end because some of it's going to get cut off anyway. So I am right on the line on the top, and I might be a little short on the bottom, but that's okay. I can make it work. So every project you do, we're going to make mistakes. We're human. But I don't think there's a single project that I've ever worked on that hasn't had some sort of mistake in it. But the mistakes kind of make it unique And I'm the only one that's going to know the mistake, except for you, of course, watching this video. But what I'm basically saying is no one's going to know the mistakes except you. So it's okay. Embrace the mistakes. Go with it. Now, if this was like an inch short, then I'd say no, I'd have to cut new fabric. But because I am literally a quarter of an inch short, and I know I'm going to be cutting some of this off anyway, I'm not too worried about it. The main idea is that the block is covered and it's going to be tacked down with the quilting, so it's not going to go anywhere. So I am embracing this little error and we're going to go with it. So let's tack down the blue fabric. Okay, don't forget before we start stitching this out to change to a matching blue thread for this. Okay, matching blue thread. All right, let's stitch it down. See, it missed it on this side and a little bit on the bottom, but like I said, that's okay because now the next stitch we're going to do is the tack down, which is going to prevent it from moving. I'm just going to watch to make sure if it gets to an edge that it doesn't actually catch it and come back up. But it's nothing that we can't handle. So let's switch out to the variegated thread. My favorite part. Isn't this just awesome? Threadart.com too has a variegated set, which I bought, which is what this was in. So I cannot wait to dabble in some more of this variegated thread. So that's all loaded. And sit back and relax and let's enjoy the stitch out. All right, we're done. Let's get this off, take a look at it. Isn't that cool? I just love that. Okay, so we're now going to proceed to the next step, which let me take you back to the screen. These are the two steps that we skip. We skip this, which is just a fold down for the blue fabric, which we already did, and the tack down for the blue fabric. So now we are ready to do tires. So I want to switch the thread in the machine to black. Okay, so black thread in the top. Now we're going to stitch the placement line for the 2 tires. Okay, so now we're ready to put the black leather down for the tires. So what I'm going to do, the instructions show you to put down like the whole piece. So it's going to stitch one there and one over there. I'm going to stitch one at a time, and I'm going to place it, and then I'm going to trim around it, and then I'm going to place the second one and trim around it. That way I can utilize more of the black leather and not waste so much. So I'm going to stop the stitching between this one and the second one. Okay, so let's put this one right there. Make sure it covers everything. Make sure. Okay. Use my stylus to hold it down. Stop the machine. Okay, now I'm going to trim around this one just so I can separate it, and then I'm going to go put black leather on the other tire. All right, now I've got a teeny piece. It might not be enough, but you know what? I'm going to go for it. Worst case, I have to take it out. Okay, I think it'll work. Again, if it doesn't, worst case, I take it out. But this piece I can't use for anything else anyway. So we are going to go for it. All right, put that down. Use the stylus. Never put your fingers this close. Ever, ever, ever. Woohoo! Nice. Okay. Now I know leather doesn't cost that much. Actually, it is a little pricey, but it's not that bad. But I just like the challenge of trying to maximize the amount that I can use out of a piece of material, because that allows me to be able to do more with the same amount. It's just a challenge to me. I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to a flat surface, the table, and we're going to trim out those tires. Okay, so we are back. We got the leather on the tires all in position. Now, the next step is to switch your thread and the upper part of the machine to be like a dark gray, because we're going to stitch the tire hubcap and the bumper fill. And if you're following along in the instructions, sorry I didn't mention it earlier, we're on page 23. This is the truck block. Sorry, page 23. Okay, so now we've put dark gray thread in the top of the machine, and we're going to stitch out the tire hubcap and the bumper fill. All right, here we go. Okay, now we get to work on the truck. How exciting. The next step is asking for a neutral thread. This is going to be a basting stitch, and we're going to be removing this. So I'm using white thread in the top of my machine so I can see the basting stitches nice and clear. What we're going to do is we're going to be stitching a truck bed pocket placement line. So this is going to be the top of the truck bed, which also is a pocket that we can put like a little button or something, an accent in. So what it's saying is we're going to be putting this on after we stitch the placement line. We're going to be lining up the top of this red leather with that placement line. So that way this will be like a nice little pocket area, nice and clean. We don't have to cut it. So white thread up on the top. It's now going to stitch out the placement line. Okay. Okay, that's fairly easy to see. So now we're going to place the red leather up against that line. Okay, and then we're going to put red thread up on top. So let's do red thread up on top first. Okay, so red thread up on the top. Now I'm going to line this up. And you really have to get on top of it to make sure you've got it lined up straight. Okay. We are lined up, ready to go. It's going to stitch down this direction, up and over the wheel well, and then back up. So I've lined this up on top. I'm going to use my stylus to hold it. Keep my other finger away. And there it goes. And then it's going to go up. Real well. And then up this side. Isn't that cool? Okay, so now we're going to trim the leather. So I'm going to take this over to the table and we're going to trim out this back truck bed. One note before we trim this, do not trim inside here. I only want you to trim outside and the wheel well and over to there. Do not trim this part because this is your pocket. You don't want to trim inside here, so this is off limits. Just trim around the edge. Isn't that cute? Okay, we're back at the machine, and now we're going to be stitching the truck cab placement line. We got red thread in there. We can leave that in. It doesn't matter. So let's stitch the red truck cab placement line. Okay, so now we're going to put down more of the red leather, and I'm going to go this direction, utilize this space, goes to here, so we got plenty going there. And we raise it up and then lower it back down. So we got enough to cover everything. Okay, let's stitch that out. Okay, I stopped it there because I just noticed that some of my bobbin thread is coming up on the top. So we are going to try to fix that. Okay, so sometimes it's just re-threading the machine that'll get that to stop. Otherwise, we're going to have to mess with the tension a little bit. But let me rethread the machine because this was doing all right. Let me rethread it and see if it fixes it. Be right back. Okay, I also took out the bobbin and put it back in. And now I'm going to go back in time. And I'm going to go backwards in stitches. So here's your option where you could go negative or positive. I want to go negative. I'm just going to go back in time to the start. And then individuals to at the very beginning of this tack down stitch, and I'm going to stitch a little bit and see if that fixes the problem. So we're just going over the previous stitches to see if that fixes it. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, once in a while that happens. So that's one of the reasons why I never leave the machine, because if I'm sitting here and I'm watching it, I can see if that happens in the first little bit and we do it. Now I can still see a couple of the white spots. That's easy to fix. It's called a red Sharpie. Get the fine point ones, real fine. You can just do a little bit of dab and cover that white up. Helps, hide any of the mistakes. But once in a while it does that. So I just need to keep an eye on it, because if it happens once, it might happen again. If so, then I need to adjust some tension a little bit. But right now we're still looking good. Let's take this to the table and trim out the truck cab. Okay, isn't that looking cute? I love Kimberbell designs. They're just, the attention to detail is really awesome with all these embellishments. Just love it. Okay, so now I've put white thread in the top of the machine, and we're going to stitch out the truck window placement line. Also, what you need to get from your embellishment kit is this piece of white. They call it a permanent topping, but to me it's almost like a vinyl. It's about 5 inches long by 2 inches wide, and it's in the embellishment kit. Let's put it up there, you can see a little bit better. That's what we're going to be needing in the next step. So put white thread up in the top, and then let's stitch out this placement line. Okay. Wait till it's done. There's a little thread there that I would like to trim off. Get that out of the way. Okay, so now we are going to place the truck window permanent topping. Okay. Just like another applique accent here. The cool thing about this is you can actually see through it. So I can see the stitch line underneath. That's kind of nice for a change. Look at that. Just make sure it covers it all. We're good. Okay, I'm going to put the foot down. This one you might want to tape in place. Unless you're going to be gutsy like me here. I'm just going to use the stylus. Because it does move around a little bit. See if there's a front or a back to it. There's really not. So it can go any direction. It can go any direction. So let's put this down. And I'm going to hold it with the stylus. Very cool. And it's filling it in. Okay, now it says here that we can tear away the excess permanent topping. We don't have to cut it, so let's just tear this away. Yep, comes off very easily. There we go. In the hoop magic. Put this over here. And we'll go for the rest of this. And one more part. How about that? And a thread to trim. Very cool. Look at that. Okay, so the next step is going to be putting down some clear vinyl on top of this window. Now, in the embellishment kit, it comes with 2 pieces of vinyl. This one is a very big piece. All right. Then inside, there's a slightly smaller piece. This is the clear vinyl that we're going to be using for the truck. The larger piece is actually slightly tinted to a mint green color. That is going to be for the windows for like the general store, farmhouse, etc. So we don't want to use the big piece that's slightly mint green. I think it's called So Candy Fresh Mint. That's the green tinted one. You want to put that one aside. You're looking for the smaller piece. It's maybe about 2 inches high, maybe about 5 inches long. That's the one that we're going to utilize for this window. So the smaller clear piece, it's not tinted, it's clear. Okay. It's not going to stitch a placement line because we don't need one. We already know where it goes because it's going over the top of the window. So we're going to just make sure that this piece is going to completely cover that window with 1/4 of an inch or so on each side to spare. You can hold it on one side, and with white thread, that works. We're going to attach the vinyl window. Here we go. All right. Cool. So now let's take this over to the table and trim away that excess vinyl. truck is really coming together. So now switch to a dark gray, and we're going to stitch the door handle. Now we have a door handle. And leave the gray on the top as well, because now we're going to do the gas pump hose and the nozzle detail. You know what? I think I'm going to change this up a little bit. It's showing the same type of dark gray as the door handle, but I think I'm going to switch mine up to more of a silver. I want it to be a little bit brighter silver. Let's just do that. Why not? You have a license to change it up to whatever color you want. So let's just do a little different. Let's do a silver. And here we go. Okay, so the next piece that you're looking for in the embellishment kit is this piece of like a turquoise aqua leather. That's going to be the gas station. So easy enough, we're just going to line that up, making sure we have about 1/4 of an inch above and then off to the side. And using the same thread, actually I'm going to double check. Rule of thumb, double check. So measure twice, cut once, measure 3 times, cut once. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to the table and we're going to trim out that gas pump. Isn't this really starting to come together? I love it. Okay, so we are now on to white thread on the top. We're going to stitch the gas pump panel fill. Let's stitch that out, white on top. Okay, next step, let's put black thread in the top because we're going to work on the gas pump meter details. Black thread on top. Isn't that cute? Okay, so let's switch it up. Put red thread on the top of your machine, and we're going to do the lower panel accent line. Red thread on top. Yay, looking good. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to put a silver back in. It's going to do the base of the gas pump and the top satin fill. So I'm going to put silver in. I want this to be all silver gas pump. So let's put the silver in. Okay, let's stitch out the top and the base of the gas pump. So I made a mistake. See, there's no project that you work on where mistakes don't occur. It just happens. So what I had done was when I had taken the red thread out to put the silver back in, I forgot to pull from here that piece of red thread. So what happens when that thread is still in there, it actually sewed red into this top section. So I was like, oh, darn. So I stopped the machine. I took out as much red as I could get. Now I'm going to start over with the silver. I'm going to back stitch the machine so that it gets back to that starting point. And a few more. And that's the previous, which was the red outline, so I want to go forward. So that's the start of the silver. So now the silver is going to cover most of it. There's a little red on the side, but that's actually part of the variegated thread from the design below, so it's going to look fine. But just know, mistakes happen. So if you do happen to leave a thread in there when you thread the next one, just make sure you catch it, you back the machine up, you take that thread out, and you start over. Mistakes happen. So now let's try this again. Yay, it's all silver this time. See, if you take a look at that, it looks fine. Mistake fixed. Okay. Now that you know it's moved up toward the top of the block, you know what that means. It's time for the rockets. So let's put red thread up above, and we're going to stitch the rocket fuse detail. Okay, here comes the fuse. Red rocket fuse. Okay, now we're going to put in white thread in the top for the rocket spark. Here comes the spark. Okay, so now we're going to do the rocket body placement line. And since I know my placement line and the tag down is going to be red, because I changed things up, I'm going to put red thread up on top. Okay, so here comes the placement line. And I will find my glitter. Here we go. And my favorite part, we're going to put down the red glitter. Gonna make sure lined up. Plenty of room. Okay. Put down. Oops. And there we go. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the table and I'm going to cut out the rocket body. Okay, let's now stitch out the rocket tip, which in my design here is going to be a white tip. If you're following instructions, it would be a red tip. Okay, let's stitch out that placement line and get our white glitter ready, because that's going to be the next piece. Okay. So we have a placement line. And I'm going to try to use this section right here. So we're going to go up, put the foot down, and nice. Okay, let's take this over to the table and trim out the rocket tip. Okay, rocket is done. Now we're on to one of the last steps. We're going to do the fireworks. So the first color fireworks is going to be white. So white thread on the top. And away we go. Okay, so now we're going to do gold thread. Gold thread up on top. Okay, let's switch to red thread up top to stitch out the red fireworks. Yay! Okay, last step. Let's switch to a matching blue thread on the top that matches your background fabric, because now we're going to stitch out the eyelet holes for the fairy lights. Okay, isn't that cute? Look at that. Isn't that just cute? I love it. Okay, so let's go meet at the table where we can finish up this block. Okay, so we're going to finish up this block here. I noticed when the machine did some of the stitches, when it was stitching out the fireworks, that some of them came through almost like a fan blade with a little jump stitch in between. So I'm going to trim those up, one right there, one right there, one right there, just so it makes it a little bit more like a firework. Just go in, just like a little jump stitch. They chose to do a lot of the lines of the fireworks individually, but then on some of them it did two at one time and gave a little jump stitch in between. So I just like to clean those up a little bit so it looks more like a firework and not a fan blade, from like the windmill. Alright, just put this up a little bit. And I see one more here. Okay, and then the white one looks like it did it as well over here, so let's trim that up just a little bit. All right, a couple more here. And here. Trick is just to grab that one and over here. And one here. And one there, and I see one more here. Just make sure you don't get the stitches from the quilting background below. You just want the jump stitch. There, that looks better. And the red is good. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so now we need to take a seam ripper, and we're going to go under. Remember when we did the truck bed? We can see them. It did little basting stitches so that we could line up this truck bed. So you want to just go under very gently. Make sure you don't get the quilting background. And take out those basting stitches. Very gently. Very gently. Okay. Trick is kind of going at it at a side angle because you don't want to come up and puncture the leather. There we go. See, it's coming out. And one more over there. So then we can trim that one up. And then do the same thing, go in this direction. Just pop it up and out. Up and out. There we go. That's good. So now those are all off. Isn't that cool? Isn't that just the cutest block? Okay, so now we're good to take it out of the hoop. Big hoop off to one side, and there's the block. Isn't that awesome? Oh, I just love this project. Okay, what I'm going to have you do now is I'm going to have you trim off the excess of the no-show mesh. Don't trim the blocks. We're going to be doing that in the future weeks. But you can go ahead and just trim off the excess of the poly no-show mesh. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just trim off the excess. That'll make the blocks a little bit easier to handle. With all this extra fluff out of the way, but just don't trim up the blocks just yet. I'm going to show you a technique in the future weeks on how to do this. And I have a couple extra tips along the way, because if you're doing a pillow, you're going to want to do it the exact size that Kimberbell is mentioned in their instructions. But if you're like me and you're switching it up a little bit, and you're doing a wall hanging, we can make it pretty much any size we want. The main goal is that we're going to want to be able to line up the blocks the same all the way across so that the distance between the top and the bottom is the same. So you can have it either right at the bottom, so it looks like the vehicle is floating right on the ground, or you can have it a little bit down. But if you're doing a wall hanging, we can make it any size we want. We just have to make it consistent, and we'll get to that when we reach that point. But just trim all your blocks so you have the extra poly no-show mesh off the back. And if you're interested, this is a set of Kimberbell Orange Pop rulers. This is the rectangle set. This is a set that I'm going to be showing you one of the techniques on when we get to cutting the blocks. So if you're interested, I have a link in my description to where you can get these if you don't already have them. These will make trimming up the blocks a lot easier because we can get it trimmed sideways and up and down with one swoop. Okay, so these Orange Pop rulers are really cool. They also make a square set, which we'll probably use for the Red, White, and Bloom project that we're going to be doing after this. Isn't that exciting? Announcement! Yes, we will be doing Red, White, and Bloom after we finish this Main Street Celebration project. So we'll probably use the rectangle set for that one. But for this set, for this project, you want to be able to use the rectangle set. Again, there'll be a link in my description as to where you can get that. It'll actually be a link to Amazon that I have. Also, if you happen to have a rotating cutting mat, that will become very handy when it comes to using these rulers. I have to dig mine out, but by that week I will have it. If you have some sort of a rotating cutting mat, that just makes it really easy to spin these guys around to make your cuts. That will come in handy. So recommended supplies, the orange pop rulers and a rotating cutting mat for when we get to that stage in this project, which will be after we get all the blocks stitched out. So that's for future items if you need them. Isn't that cute? Well, that is it for today's lesson. Isn't that awesome? You guys did great. I hope you join me next week here on Jolly Molly TV, where we work on block number 5 of the Kimberbell Main Street Celebration pillow/wall hanging. Thank you for joining me on this fun adventure. Hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.